As we move forward into more complex web programming languages, i.e. JavaScript and eventually PHP, it will be more useful to have an actual local server serving those files to the browser as the client. Up until now, we've simply been reading the files directly without any actual server to interpret or properly sanitize them before they're sent to the browser. And this works fine when we're working in HTML and CSS. But as soon as we move into JavaScript, we can potentially run into some situations where the browser will refuse to load the files due to security concerns. To get around this, I have a base project set up for you to use that will start an actual program running in the background that behaves just like a server that were out on some other computer. To begin with, make sure you've installed all of the programs that were mentioned back at the beginning of the course. In particular, now we will be making use of Git, as well as Node.js, and eventually PHP when we get to Unit 3. There is one thing that we need to do before we go any further. Right now, you need to go through and install a program called Grunt. You can use npm to do this. You may remember npm is part of Node.js. It's the Node package manager. We're going to say install -g, which means globally, Grunt. Grunt is a program that will automate repetitive tasks for us, i.e. the grunt work. And this is what will actually spin up and keep running the little local server for us. Once this has completed, we're ready to actually start a module that requires a local server. Let's go on into Unit 2 here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, assuming I'm starting a module. I'll call this module 2.0. Then, if I right-click on that module, one of the options should be Git Bash here. And when I select that, it brings up that prompt that at this point you should be getting used to. This was the same prompt we just used to install Grunt. From here, I'm going to use a program called Git. The particular project I have hosted out on a service called GitHub. So we need to clone that project. So we'll issue the git clone command. Then you need the URL for the project. You can find this URL on the course website, or you can go to the actual GitHub webpage where the project is hosted, and you'll find it under the big green clone or download button. You do not need to create an account to be able to do this. Type in git clone and then that project, and then I recommend putting in a dot so that it clones it right into the current directory. Press enter, and it will very quickly grab the base files that are needed and keep them loaded into this directory. After you've installed the base project, you'll need to install several node modules that Grunt uses in order to create a local server. This is done with a simple command, npm install. This command will take some time as there are many related packages that have to be installed to achieve this. You may notice some warnings as it's installing. All of these can be safely ignored. Once everything has finished, you can test that it is working correctly by simply typing grunt at the command line and hitting enter. This will fire off a script that starts the server running on your local computer. It will then automatically open that server in your default web browser. Note, this server is going to be called localhost, and it's running on port 3000. So you can actually open this in any browser you want and just type in localhost:3000. Now let's also open this module up in Atom and take a look at what files are actually being served. Most of what you see under the module directory is stuff that you don't need to worry about. The files that you need to concern yourself with will all be under the folder public. These are the files that the server serves on request. Anytime we try to visit localhost 3000, it's going to go into public and find index.html and serve it. Now, let's go ahead and edit this so that you can see how these two things stay in sync. If I make changes over here, they don't immediately show up in the web page. And that's simply because I haven't saved it yet. Let's enter in something new and then save it. As the file is saved, Grunt detects that and causes the browser to immediately refresh itself. You'll see some messages pop up about browser sync, but those can be safely ignored. They're simply telling you that I sensed a change, and here it comes. I'm going to throw in the big old lorem ipsum text here. This is actually a snippet that you can use inside of Atom. You just type lorem and then hit enter, and it will throw all of this in there. If you don't know what lorem ipsum is, feel free to go Wikipedia it. So you can see here, any changes that I make over here, as soon as I save the file, immediately show up over here. This is going to be extremely useful when we're working with JavaScript. As soon as we make changes over here, they will load into the browser, and if there's any errors, they'll be evident immediately. We can pull up the developer tools in the browser, identify the errors, and come right back to Atom in order to edit and fix those errors. We'll have a similar situation when we're working with PHP. When you're done working on a module and you want to set it aside for a while, you can close out of both the browser and Atom, and then make sure you come back to your terminal where you ran Grunt. It's important to stop Grunt because it will keep running in the background. You can do this by just simply hitting Control-C. This cancels the current running process. If you want to start it again, just make sure before you start editing the module that you run Grunt again. You would simply bring it up again by right-clicking and say Git bash here, and it will start it back up again. And you will then be able to visit localhost 3000, and you'll be able to edit it inside of Atom and see your changes dynamically. When you have finished and you're all done with a module and it's time to submit it, all you need to submit is the public folder. You can individually submit the files that are inside of the public folder and make sure to include them all unless the instructions explicitly tell you not to. Or you could right-click on the public folder and say send to compressed folder, and this will zip them into a folder that you can then drop into the Dropbox, and I'll be able to work with that on my end.